I think I felt every emotion one could possibly experience this afternoon. What did I say? Texas Motor Speedway is the biggest wildcard track in this wildcard round of 12. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove post-Texas edition. I got my Bucky shirt out for such an occasion. Unfortunately, I'm not out in Texas, but kudos to the crowd that showed up today. 100-degree temperatures, the hottest NASCAR Cup Series race at Texas Motor Speedway on record, and at least on TV. That was one of the best crowds I've seen the past several years. So much to process, so much to discuss tonight. Real quick, if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We talk NASCAR every single day here on Out of the Groove. Compared to many other major motorsports, there is one thing about NASCAR that often sets it apart, especially these days. NASCAR is unpredictable. Did Max Verstappen win again this morning? What if I told you that today at Texas, the regular season champion was a non-factor all day, finished 17th? What if I told you that the driver and car that drove out to a 5-6 second lead multiple times crashed out? Did not finish. What if I told you that the number 16 seed, the lowest seeded driver entering these playoffs, what if I told you he led the most laps today? Yeah, NASCAR is unpredictable, and the last few years since that sketchy reconfiguration, Texas Motor Speedway is one of the biggest wild cards on the schedule. I tried to warn y'all earlier this week, this round is full of wild card tracks with Talladega and the Roval coming up, but Texas was flying under the radar. Last year, the next-gen car set a track record for cautions at Texas Motor Speedway. We saw a lot of tire failures. This time around, Goodyear brought a new right side tire, complete unknown. Didn't see many tire failures today, but we did see record-setting temperatures. Kyle Busch, a championship contender, crashed out early. Kyle Larson, best car of the day, crashed out late. Blaney, Reddick, other playoff drivers involved in incidents. So much happened today. I don't even know where to start. Let's do what we always do. Let's start at the finish. The final restart. This race ended with several short runs, several quick crashes, quick cautions, quick restarts. Let's start with the final restart. Bubba Wallace led the most laps today, 111 out of, I believe, 267. Most laps he's ever led in his NASCAR Cup Series career. Also won the pole. It was his first pole award of the season. He said after the race, talking to NBC USA Network, that he choked. He said that he fooled himself into picking the outside lane 3 times in a row. I know Bubba Wallace is emotional. He has a tendency to be very hard on himself, but I don't believe he choked in this case. You look at the 3 restarts he's talking about. The first time he picked the outside, he wasn't even the control car, but he got such a great launch, a great jump. He was able to stay side by side with and put pressure on Kyle Larson, who'd proven to be the best car of the day. Larson spins out, Bubba gets the lead. Bubba picked the outside again, and the second time around, it worked perfectly. Got another great launch. He was clear before they got to turn 1. So I don't think it's choking that Bubba Wallace picked the outside lane a third time. It had worked for him brilliantly 2 times in a row. The only difference on that final restart, the only risk picking the outside is that it does leave you vulnerable. Bubba almost got crashed on that first restart when Larson spun around. The difference on that third and final restart is that William Byron gave Chase Briscoe a really good push on that inside lane, allowed the 14 to stay even with the 23. And if you look at the exit of turn 2, the 14 car drifts up a lane. Bubba's forced to lift because the outside at Texas is so sketchy. That's what allowed Byron to get a run on both of them and make the 3-wide move for the win. Bubba was vulnerable picking the top, but picking the top was the aggressive move that Bubba had made work twice previously. So sure, maybe third time wasn't the charm in this case, but to say you choked when it was the guy to your inside who got tight and drifted up into your lane and forced you to lift, that's not on you. You can say in hindsight, oh, I should have picked the bottom. Maybe that was a better choice in that instance, but the top had been working. Bubba didn't choke. And I hate to hear him say that because Bubba Wallace and that whole 23XI racing team proved today that they belong. There was a ton of pressure on Bubba Wallace just to make the playoffs. They snuck in, barely. There was pressure on Bubba to make it out of the round of 16 to prove just making the playoffs wasn't a fluke. They did that. I feel like right now all of 23XI Racing should have the least amount of weight on their shoulders they've had all season. Bubba Wallace has already exceeded preseason expectations. Anything from here on out is just gravy. He came home with a top 5 finish, led the most laps, won the pole. I know you're disappointed you won that race, but you didn't choke. If anything, today, once again, the 23 team far exceeded just about any of our expectations. It stinks to come up just short, but hey, that's just NASCAR racing. Again, NASCAR is way more unpredictable than just about any other form of motorsports. I want to go back one restart previously. I'm sure emotions were running high for Bubba based on what had happened before that final restart. I mentioned Kyle Larson. Side by side with Bubba. Bubba was on him tight, got his car to stick in turns 3 and 4, then heading into 1, really even before they got into the turn, Larson's car snapped loose on him, wrecked hard up into the outside wall. I really feel awful for Kyle Larson because he had, I think, the best car in the field. Didn't lead the most laps, but the second half of this race especially, once he got out front, boy, he never looked back. Drove out to a 5, 6, 7 second lead 2 or 3 different times in this race. Kyle Larson has had top 5 speed in all 4 playoff races thus far. It looked like he was heading for his second win, at the very least his 4th straight top 5 to open the playoffs. And to see it all go up in smoke hard into the outside wall like that, yeah, I feel for Larson fans. He had a great race today, was looking to potentially lock himself into the round of 8 or at least have a fantastic points day. Instead, he is right on the cut line. We'll look at the points in a moment. It's stunning how quickly your fortune can change just like that. That was a terrible snap. I can't really snap with my left hand. My right hand. Is anybody else like that? Is anybody ambidextrous when it comes to snapping? I'm not. But back to the incident itself. I know Bubba and Kyle Larson have a history, but in this instance, I hope everyone can see it was just hard racing. That battle was decided, honestly, when Bubba Wallace got his 23 to stick through turns 3 and 4 and had a slight nose out front of Larson. At that point, Larson was in the unfavorable position. He was going to have to drive it really hard into turn 1 and on older tires at that point. Remember, he had 30 or 40 laps on his tires at this point. Hadn't really been used to restarting like that all day. Perhaps he misjudged how his car would stick. Bubba was crowding him, but again, the 5 kind of broke loose before they even got into the banking too far. So I think it's just a racing deal, a hard racing deal that did not work out for Kyle Larson, unfortunately. So I do feel for him. We'll talk about who won this race in just a moment, but honestly, to me so far, it's clear that Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin are the class of the field. I mentioned Larson's results, should have had his 4th straight top 5, maybe his 2nd win of the playoffs tonight. Instead, he wrecked out. Denny Hamlin, if he didn't have that loose wheel at Darlington, he'd have multiple playoff wins already this season as well. He finished top 5 tonight despite having right side door damage and despite employing a contrarian pit strategy towards the end. So right now, Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, not locked into the round of 8, but they are, in my opinion, the 2 fastest cars on a consistent basis, at least these past 4 weeks. Let's go ahead and talk about the winner now, who is locked into the round of 8. William Byron wins it. Maybe some good luck after he came on out of the groove yesterday. He survived the Texas heat, got a great final restart. I mentioned was able to push Chase Briscoe up side by side with Bubba. Once Briscoe got tight, they both slid up the track and lifted. Byron was able to take advantage, diving in to the inside 3 wide, heading into turn 3. Oh boy, I was worried for a second Bubba was going to accidentally hook him. Didn't happen. William Byron wins the race. Was very quiet in this one. He didn't qualify well. Where did he qualify? 18th, yeah. And he stayed out at the end of stage 1 to get some stage points and some track position, but they pit right away at the beginning of stage 2, lost all that track position, and it took him the entire second half of this race to get most of it back, but he was able to pass. We saw other drivers like Tyler Reddick get stuck back in traffic, couldn't go forward. Martin Truex Jr. stuck back in traffic, couldn't go forward. William Byron, second half of this race, slowly but surely worked his way towards the front. I think he drove up to 5th or 6th before the final just string of restarts and cautions. So he'd worked himself up into position naturally to then take advantage of all the late race restarts. So early in the race, I was concerned because I didn't see much from William Byron last week at Bristol. Completely different track to Texas, but I wondered if that 24 had maybe lost some of the magic they had earlier this year. They found it once again the second half of this race. So very encouraging stuff. Obviously, he's locked into the round of 8 now, so these next 2 weeks are just about earning more playoff points. Congratulations to William Byron. Gets Rick Hendrick his 300th win as a NASCAR owner. That's a pretty crazy milestone. Did y'all notice that they had a big hat with the 300 on it ready just for this occasion? I want to know how long that's been sitting like in someone's truck. And what if William Byron didn't get the 300th win? Were they still going to bring it out? Was it going to go to waste if Chase Elliott or Kyle Larson had won instead? These are the questions that need answering. We'll look at the points in a moment, but you can see here the top 5 all playoff drivers. Ross Chastain finishes a strong second. Again, late in this race, there was differing pit strategy, a lot of restarts, so things got a bit jumbled up. Ross Chastain was not a top 5 car most of the day, but honestly, it was hard to tell because it was so hard to pass with all the different pit strategies. When you got stuck back in traffic on even fresh tires, it was difficult to move forward. Ross Chastain was decent today. I don't know that he was ever a top 5 car, but he made the most of it. Gets a second place. Bubba, I mentioned, still gets third. Really great result. Christopher Bell. How on earth did he end up with a top 5? He was running 15th to 20th. He was one of those guys like a Reddick, like Truex, who were stuck mid-pack and could not go forward. I'll have to go back and rewatch some of those final restarts a little more closely to see exactly how Christopher Bell gained all that track position, but hey, great work. And good pit call by Adam Stevens, having him stay out at the end of stage 1 to get 8 additional stage points. Denny Hamlin probably had the second fastest car in this race, despite the damage he sustained on pit road. When Ty Gibbs, I saw some tweets along these lines, and I was going to dismiss them as silly conspiracy theories or just funny, witty social media jokes, but I'm almost a believer now. Maybe Ty Gibbs intentionally door slammed Denny Hamlin there to try and get that little warp, that little concave angle. Back in the day when they used to flare out the right side fenders, that gave some extra downforce, some better speed. NASCAR banned it. So then you had pit crew guys intentionally throwing their whole freaking body weight against the door to flare it out. Maybe Joe Gibbs, this was some next level thinking. Hey, Ty, you're out of the playoffs. Sacrifice your car to indent Hamlin's right side door. Maybe it was on purpose. Maybe. I don't think so. It's probably not. But Hamlin, hey, despite the damage, still had a top 5 car. Probably had a top 5 car, maybe a top 2 or top 3 car, even before the damage. Great run for Kevin Harvick, not in the playoffs anymore, but his final Texas race, I was sitting up in the grandstands for at least a couple of Kevin Harvick's Texas race wins. Brad Keselowski hangs on for a solid top 10. His RFK teammate Chris Buescher, though, winds up finishing 14th, but good for Chris Buescher. He earned more stage points today than anyone. Several playoff drivers are not pictured here. Martin Truex Jr. finished 17th. He must have had some damage to his rear diffuser after getting hit in the rear and spun out at the end of stage 1. These playoffs have been a struggle for the regular season champion. He probably had a fast car at Kansas, but had a flat tire on lap 3 and DNF'd. Darlington, I think he had a bent part, something ran like 18th. He ran like 18th at Bristol last week. Texas didn't qualify very well yesterday. I don't know. Something always seems to go wrong for Martin Truex Jr., and they don't have as much raw speed as they've had at other points in this season to overcome it. I'm a little worried about Martin Truex. He's got plenty of playoff points, but he's going to need every single one of them at this rate. I want to mention Tyler Reddick. Great call by his team to leave him out at the end of stage 1 as well. Took full advantage of that final one-lap shootout to get a free playoff point and also 10 stage points. So despite getting caught up in that big crash towards the end when both he and Eric Jones just clobbered the turn 4 wall, despite finishing 25th, Reddick at least gets some bonus points for that stage. Ryan Blaney used some great pit strategy to get track position. This was a track position race. Blaney's teammates, Logano and Cindric, were racing around 30th. All day. So Penske was clearly terrible. Blaney may have been a little bit better, but he spent much of this race in the top 5, top 10. I don't think he had a top 5 car. Blaney did throw some key points away, though, by speeding on pit road in stage 3. That's, I think, part of why he was back in amidst the chaos when Reddick and Jones crashed. Speaking of Eric Jones, not a playoff driver, but he finishes 30th today despite having a top 5 car. Looked super fast before the differing pit strategy and late race cautions. Was really impressed with Jones. Another strong weekend for Legacy Motor Club. Kyle Busch finishes 34th. Terrible race for RCR with Austin Dillon finishing dead last. But late in stage 1, Kyle Busch reported after a restart that maybe he had a flat tire. Something was chattering. We saw him go wide on the restart. He went kind of wide in turns 1 and 2 another couple of times before eventually the thing just snapped loose on him and he wrecked. I don't know what to make of this team. A couple days ago in my video, I picked Kyle Busch to be eliminated this round because I just don't like inconsistency. At times this year, Kyle Busch has looked like a championship contender, but at other times, they've either missed it or they've had issues. Like the first 2 races of these playoffs, they had issues on Saturday that put them way behind on Sunday. Whatever rhyme or reason, the 8 car doesn't have consistency. And right now, they don't seem to have top 5 speed either. That's a bad combination. So I had Kyle Busch out in this round. I didn't expect him to crash early at Texas, but I mean, this is par for the course at this point. That's how this season, especially the second half of this season, has gone. So tough break there for Kyle Busch. Those are your top finishers, though. Let's flip this around and take a look at the points now. 2 races to go in the round of 12. Talladega next week. Again, Texas is a big wild card. Talladega, it has its reputation. Kyle Busch, Ryan Blaney, they may be at the bottom, but they're not in must-win territory yet. We'll see what happens at Talladega. I know Bubba Wallace wanted to win. He's minus 2 points now, but hey, he was minus 14 coming in. He's been great at Talladega in the past. You dodge the big wreck, Bubba will likely be in contention for the win there, chance to gain even more points. I still think the 23 team should be very proud of the effort they put forth today. Tyler Reddick minus 3. It's really tight right there. And look at Kyle Larson, currently 8th, the last driver in as of now. This guy was leading by 6 seconds late in this race. Looked like he had his round of 8 ticket punched already. Look how quickly things can change. These points are extremely tight. Only William Byron can more or less rest easy the next 2 races. But now that we've seen the points, we've discussed some of the top finishers, let's wrap this up by putting a Texas Motor Speedway on the groovy gauge. Oh man, it really comes down to your personal preferences. Do you like races that are more processional, where the fastest drivers in cars ultimately finish in the top 5, duke it out amongst themselves more naturally? Or do you embrace the madness? Do you like when wheels are left loose, are falling off on track, multiple cautions, super sketchy outside lane in turns 1 and 2, favorites crashing out late, topsy-turvy, results shuffling, points shuffling? What are you into? Do you like the chaos, or do you want a more straightforward race? If you want a more straightforward race, you got that, for the most part, for the first 230, 240 laps or so. Kyle Larson was dominating, had the best car, was going to earn the victory. But if you like chaos, you got more than your fair share of it there in the final 20 or 30 laps or so. So, I mean, this race, gosh, it was like 2 different races. My scores lately have been so consistent. I hate to sound boring, but I'm going to give Texas a 70. A 70 on the groovy gauge. I thought it was a pretty good race, mainly because of the storylines it created. The NASCAR Cup cars do not race very well here. The turns 1 and 2, you could argue, are broken. 3 and 4, you're practically flat out around those corners. Dirty air. Very hard to pass. Very little tire wear. It's not a great track, but it produced plenty of highlights today. Let me put it that way. So I'm going to go pretty good because it gave us plenty to talk about, and that's always important, but not the cleanest, most straightforward or natural NASCAR race by any means. But I'll go 70. Let me know what you thought of tonight's Texas Motor Speedway. I'm not going to say the name of the race. It was like the Echo Motive Auto Trader Echo Park Grand 540 or whatever it was called. Had like 4 different names. But what do you think of tonight's Texas race? I am glad. I think this is 2 years in a row now that they've shortened this race to 400 miles. I think that fits Texas way better than 500 miles. Give me your take down in the comment section below, but that is going to do it for my race recap. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed. The playoffs are here. If you're a NASCAR fan, there's no better place to be. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. And as always, a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters. Have a great rest of your weekend, folks. I will see you again likely tomorrow. Still plenty more to break down after this weekend, I'm sure. Thanks for watching, y'all. I'll see you in the next episode.